come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. All unabomber.
Hello everybody and welcome to another Weegamers interview. I am joined today by two rising stars. Well, they're going to be rising stars, certainly after They Live is at the shelves and people seem very pleased. I am joined by Andrew and Luke from Iconiq Studios. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedules to join us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolute pleasure. I've been very nice this time and furnished you with the questions in advance because you're new to the Weegamers, so you don't know how off mark we can go and how crazy our conversations can be. If you get time, log into the YouTube and watch Carl from Crooked Dice and I talk, because we can fill an hour and a half and not even mention gaming. So we'll get the ball rolling with the fact that Iconiq Studios is obviously very well known for its high-end collector figures. Sadly, out of a poor humble gamer like mine's price range. Don't look at the collection behind me, don't judge me. But how and when did the gaming department come into being?
Well, that's a really good one, because I mean, like, to be honest, right back in the day when we first started the sort of journey into working out figures and everything like that, the gaming thing kind of started at the same time. And the reason that they cross over so well is that when you go and have a conversation around IP with the studio and see what's available and what you can make, you get a big list of what you're allowed to use or what would be allowed to be licensed. And whilst working our way through everything, we got to They Live, and it sort of grew from there. It was the opportunity to go, ooh, that'd make a really good game. What could we do with it? And that was sort of the birth of where that came from.
Cool.
So we're going to go from there.
Yeah, because that's the other thing I was going to say. Obviously, within the gaming industry, there sort of seems to be a bit of a land grab these days for IPs. And that sort of was in the mind that which came first, the concept for the game or the IP. But it kind of sounds like, from your point of view, it was a natural meeting point. You kind of arrived at this IP and then discovered, oh, we could go a lot of places with this.
Yeah. I think that's completely fair. I think the first thing, obviously, you chat to the studio, you see what's available, you see what you're allowed to do with it, and how far you can go with it. That was one of the first, sort of key decisions that we made whilst looking at it, and then it was about sort of building parts of the game, working out what would work, what wouldn't work, and the moment that it completely came to life was very, very early. Like, literally, we had a conversation one week about They Live and the opportunity for a board game. And I was in China checking some factories out. And as you do over there, you pop to malls and things like that. And in an optician's, we saw the polarizing technology. And it was like, that's They Live. How can I make this? That is the perfect thing we've been talking about. Because, I mean, we started with all the DMark things, like with Casino Ink and all sorts of things like that. And it evolved into, no, you can literally put the glasses on and see hidden images, and it's real. And how can I sort of turn this into something which will work with the ideas and the groundwork that we have for a game?
Well, I think with most of the stuff we do, we tend to aim at the IP first, because we want to build something specifically for that. We don't want to take an IP and put it on an existing idea. We very much want to put people into that world. And with They Live, that was the approach, is how can we put people into that?
Well, okay, I mean, that actually leads to a natural sort of side question then. This is already, we're going off track. But, I mean, you're... oh no, panic! So you're sitting there, you guys build lovely figures. You're sitting with an IP holder, you're saying, oh, hang on, we could totally do something here. Did you have people literally not sitting around the office doing nothing, waiting for this to happen? Or how did you then build the team that was going to make this happen?
It sounds a lot more you make it sound a lot more glamorous than it really was.
That's one of my skills.
The way it went very quickly was sort of coming up with the game, and the conversation just started as a conversation. And then it sort of ended off, I think it was a 128-page document that I wrote in a week. like with virtually no sleep. Like, this is what I think this looks like. This is what I think the art style is. This is what I think these parts are, and it's how can we make them? How can we build them? And stuff like that. I literally have no sleep. And then there's another gentleman who we were working with called Matt, who designed loads of the game as well. And sort of there was a lot of back and forward with sort of me and him, and looking at ideas and how it could grow, and then taking that and showing it to the studio, and then after we found the tech, showing that to them as well, and saying, look, we've got the ability to make this, and then convincing them to allow us to use characters that don't exist in the universe was fun. You know what I mean? I have to say the studio be so accommodating, but not just, oh, go and make this, do what you want, but at the same time not, oh, you can't do this, and really precious over it. It's one of those studio experiences that I've really enjoyed, because there's been that real back and forth and asking questions because they want to understand, rather than just a direct yes or no because of how we feel on the day.
Mm.
So it was like, as I say, it was building that document and that brief, showing that to the studio, and then they were very excited about the ideas that we had, because obviously it expands quite a lot and stuff, and sort of growing it from there. So it was then speaking to artists, people who we'd worked with before, people who did things like figure box design and stuff like that, which naturally then leads into, oh, we can use similar art styles, we can use movie-themed art, we can use stuff like that. And obviously, when you talk to production, you can speak to people who, predominantly deal in plastics and action figure stuff, and say, do you know a guy who can do X, Y, and Z? And everybody knows somebody else in production. It's like you speak to a tradesman and they know a really good plasterer and they know a good plumber, and it's the same sort of thing in production. So you've got the opportunity to speak to all these people, bring them all to the table, and sort of bring that naturally together. It's very much not a right, we're going to do this and go, and this is all set in stone. It's very flexible and malleable based on what was available, who was available, and what we wanted to do.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, they live as a game. I mean, from my point of view, you've done a fantastic job on it. It looks the part, it feels the part, it's got the flavour, it's got the atmosphere. I was going to say I imagined that working with the studio, with the IP holder, would have been one of those little stumbling blocks where you had to kind of plead your case. I mean, from my own point of view, one of the games we've been working on is the Dracula tabletop. But obviously, as a war game, that doesn't work with the characters of Dracula. There's not enough there. So all these new people had to be introduced to make that workable. And there was, let's call it friction. So what then were the stumbling blocks that you did run into? Or was this just, once you started the ball rolling, did it just roll down the hill and everything fell into place?
I think narratively there were definitely some stumbling blocks there, some challenges there in how we, because we had to expand on the stories of the existing characters as well, but not impact the story that they went through in the movie. We had an endpoint, we had certain story beats that they had to meet. So we had to identify where that wiggle room was, that we could tell additional stories for them within that. And then to create new characters and as Andy touched on, sell them to the studio and say, this is what's happening in the movie, but we've got other things happening elsewhere in the city, and trying to expand on that. So I think there were definitely some challenges to overcome with that, and not capture the movie and expand on it, but without damaging any of that continuity within it. I think that was a stumbling block we had to get through.
Yeah, that was quite important, and you did a lot of really good. I mean, I'm not just trying to make you excited, just say wonderful things about you on camera, Luke, but there was a lot of work that went into that. There was a gent called Dave who was in the early days as well, who helped with some of the character concepts and sort of research of the period as well to bring that into place. And Luke sort of fleshed out these stories, which I'm sure he's going to talk about later, which was really good. I think the other big stumbling block from sort of our size was making sure things translated from a mechanics point of view as well. So it was like, how do you do the fight and do justice to it? How do you make each fight feel like there's a back and forth and there's risk to it, rather than just roll the dice, we're done, right, great, thanks, bye. And that was it. It was, so as you'll see, in the mechanics of like trying to check somebody in the glasses. There's a lot of back and forward with that, and it feels like a tussle. And obviously getting it to the point where the glasses just worked. There's, because it's not as simple as this is an off the shelf technology and we could just go, all right, we'll just put that in the game. It was there was me taking bits of plastic together by heating it up on a radiator and peeling things to get to bits, to then build new stuff, to then send it back to the factory and go, I've made this, I want you to try and replicate it. Here's my scribbles on a notepad of what I've done, and then backwards and forwards. And I will admit it on camera. I remember I had a really rough day and I came home and the first sample of the weird stuff that we'd made was there. And I cried. I just absolutely bawled because it was just, I've got a child on the way at the moment and I've got a 15-year-old and that was my child in between. It was, we've birthed this and me and an artist talking over WhatsApp for ages about, try this and try this bit of technology and stuff like that, and watching millions of YouTube videos on polarization and science and how it works and what affects it, the impacts, and just things like that. It was difficult. Like, somebody to replicate this would have to go through a hell of a lot of work together.
Yeah. It's games development. Everyone thinks it's all fun and conventions, but behind the scenes, there's an awful lot that has to go on. So yeah, the game obviously has an awful lot of working parts, and as you quite rightly said, there's the to and fro, there's the different card sets that all relate to each other, and everything sort of gels really nicely, and the flow is there as you go. How long was it? How long did it really take before one day you were able to sit back at the table and go, that's it, it works now, leave it the hell alone?
I don't think I ever stopped. I think initially the sort of birth of this was 2017, 2018, like that long ago. Obviously, you do a lot of stuff pre-license before you approach a license, and as I say, we'd had conversations but not signed anything, and stuff like that. And like I say, that we ended off with this massive document of 100 and odd pages of just all these ideas that just fell out onto there, and it was about making sure that was sort of gonna work, and testing all of those bits individually was a really important thing for us. Like, is this fun on its own? Because what we didn't want to happen was you to have this really cool narrative adventure, but actually the rolling the dice and the combat in between's boring, and you just kind of get this over with so I can get to the next bit, and that was really important to make sure that there was that all these pieces not only gelled as a whole, but individually worked and were engaging. And so it also creates a weird narrative sort of thrust from the game, because you could get stuck in fighting and enjoying the combat, for example, but there's that clock ticking in the background. Like, you need to move on, you need to get on with this. And so there's all these external pressures whilst playing it. It's not a really super casual game. There is pressures there. And I think that's really important was to get it there and to get it to that point. And also the sort of cross we made for ourselves was when we went on Kickstarter. Initially, the plan was to not have the 1 to 3 player mode and to have it as a stretch goal for our plan. Yeah. Which was great because then it would be like, right, this will take X amount more time to develop. And basically day one we got on there and a lot of people really wanted to play it solo. And we were like, right, we know we've got this campaign going on and we're dealing with all this, but we really need to move the goalposts and take those ideas and fix them in and show them that community and say, do you want this or not? So although we already had the building blocks of the 1 to 3 player mode, as regards the Kickstarter campaign, we sort of formulated that one a lot quicker because it was based off what people were saying that they wanted in that, and then putting that out. And luckily, we've had really good response to it, both from a testing point of view, but also from people in the real world now playing that 1 to 3 player.
Happy days. Yeah. It has become much more of a prerequisite now in gaming, especially I think obviously because of COVID and the restrictions that have been on people for so long. That solo mode was really essential. But then I've chatted to a lot of guys who the solo mode, they've no real, it's not that they don't have an interest in playing it, they use the solo mode to teach themselves the game so that then they can sit down with a group of 6, because I've done that a couple of times now, and I was like, right, how do I explain this to you all again? And once that's cemented into your head in a solo play, it's all much more fluid. Just watch what I'm doing and do what I'm doing. So,
yeah,
well worth having.
So COVID was an interesting challenge in itself, because when COVID hit, we were developing the 1 to 3 player mode, and we were testing the main game, which became a challenge when we couldn't get together. So that was a real thing that we had to overcome. And any time the restrictions were lifted a little bit, we had to try and get together, make sure we continue testing, do what we could over camera, do test rolls, and test all the mechanics in isolation.
Send people really ugly copies of stuff.
And people interesting copies, yeah.
Turn over and go, it'll look pretty, I promise.
Yeah, we had, I'd forgotten about that. We had a spreadsheet where every version of the cards had either A or B written on it. And then every time you played the game, the spreadsheet would randomise which one of each card was human, which was alien. That was an interesting time.
Luke lives for spreadsheets. It's why he works here.
I can imagine there were a few play testing sessions where the air was blue with a few profanities, perhaps, at that stage.
A little bit, yeah.
I still remember when that spreadsheet died midway through. Like, it just locked up. And I have to reboot everything. It's things like that that are super difficult. And also COVID impacted. The plan was for me to be on the ground in China, literally as things came off the line, going, I don't like that, that needs fixing, this needs to happen. Literally sat next to a production line, and so quite a lot of the things that happened, we ended off doing things like flying 20, 30 copies out and then doing a full audit. Now, you know how much is in this box, there's loads. Yeah. So it involved like me, Luke, a friend of ours, Luke's wife, Luke's partner, my partner, people like that, doing full audits of every single, is that there? Yes. Is that there? Yes, on multiple copies. And spend like 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day going through all these copies to make sure every card was there, because what we wanted to do is to go through that audit procedure and make sure we were doing it and we'd seen it as if we were there, like we would pull 30 copies off the line. And then we paid a third-party company in China to go out and check them as well. So there was a lot of weird restrictions and movements that we had to make sure all these things sort of tied up because of COVID. So yeah.
The audit itself was always interesting because so many cards have hidden images as well. So we all had to have a cards constantly on and off.
Don't. We're not strange. It's part of what we have to do. We're all going to sit in this room indoors wearing sunglasses.
8 o'clock at night, sunglasses on in your living room.
And one of the first games that we played, one of the guys, as I expected, of course, just put the sunglasses on straight away, and then looked around at the guy sitting beside him and just, and he'd done it so suddenly and so loudly, the fella nearly fell off his chair in shock. Yeah, the sunglasses, they're too much of a toy. And I have so far resisted the temptation to go outside wearing them. I'm following my own advice. They're not sunglasses.
They're not.
We have to, for legal reasons, say they're not sunglasses because we haven't gone through the sunglasses approved procedure. But the fact that they came from a sunglasses factory might,
It's okay. Listen,
for legal reasons, don't wear them and look at the sun. For real reasons, they're probably very similar to polarized sunglasses.
Yeah.
So legally, I'm not claiming any responsibility for you looking at the sun.
It's probably the same reason why a well-known pizza chain in America has to refer to its topping as pizza cheese rather than cheese. It's similar, but it's not the same. So yeah, you mentioned about your big document filled with ideas. I mean, every games developer, every games designer we've spoken to has always had we just couldn't put this in, or I would have liked it, but it had to be left out, or it didn't quite fit. Were there specific things that you guys had for They Live where you thought, I just wish we could have it, but there's not time, it's going to push the cost up too far, it's cool, but it doesn't work with the rest of the game? Was there little things that were like that for yous?
There's a lot of writing, I think, that I could have put in there. There was a lot of character stuff. The first character I tackled was a character called Detective Dixon, and there were pages and pages of his story. And then when I sent it over, I was quite proud of it. It came back this has to fit on a card. We need 2 or 3% of this at most. And
it was beautiful. It was like this noir detective movie, the They Live universe, and I'm like, yeah, but I need it that big.
It was good to have because it helped develop the character, and a lot of that ended up being fed into various story cards. But I could have quite happily written a book about each of the characters and included that if we could. If we could have included a novel series with each character, I'd have happily done that.
So I mean that begs another side question: why not? Why not now that you've seen that it's had its success, that it's gone out, it's being well received? I mean, is there scope? And I know I'm jumping a little bit here. But I mean, is there scope for a sequel in gaming terms to They Live, or an expansion, where then things like that narrative can be included? Because that's the sort of thing that happens in a lot of games. I mean, 40k, for example, is a prime example. Shelves filled with books about the game world.
I think specifically talking about if we did books and things, this is. We're quite early into this gaming side, and I think we have to decide where we put ourselves and our attention. And if we do more in They Live, I think it's a case of we'll see. Our focus at the moment is getting this delivered, and then there's definitely scope within that. It's a fascinating and rich world.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like you with the writing stuff. There's so much cool stuff that from mechanics and from physical stuff as well. I mean, like there was a whole fighting mechanic that was far too big for, it was like, let's stop the game and play a completely separate game and then come back. And that could make something really cool as a side thing, which is cool. I think there was a really cool dice tower thing, which I don't even want to get into because it's something really unique, more than just dropping dice through it. That I wanted shaped as Cable 54.
I was just going to say, tell me it's going to be Cable 54.
I think I have one made of cardboard somewhere. I went to Luke's house one day, just rattling around this horrible cardboard box with pieces of tape and all these things stuck to it. I was like, look, I've made it.
I've already,
by the way.
I've already contemplated making one.
I mean,
yeah.
So it was there that it comes down to cost then, and at that point it starts to be. I mean, being honest, the amount of costs over our production increased because of COVID. So we ended off with things cost a lot more than we estimated, and it was about making sure that we got everything out there to people and whatever. That was the number one priority. And I just think if we'd added extra stuff on top, and I think for a first game, going, all right, here's $100 out of the gate is a big ask. And I know some people pledged, the really special versions of the game that were up to those amounts. But it was a big ask for a mainstream audience to go, we've never released anything, here's spend $100 on it. And I think that was, there was stuff that we could do, as I say, adjacent to it or expansions or whatever. But I think the core focus at the moment has to be getting out there, see how it's received. I mean, obviously you're sort of the UK region, so you've got yours. Europe's in the process of getting there. America's in the process of getting there, and we want to see what that feedback is. I will say I don't think this version with the amount of stuff that's in it will probably see the light of day again. I mean, maybe the odd bits of additional stock, but I think there'll be not a pared down version, but with opportunities or different price break points or something like that we'd have to look at for it, because I think that as you've seen how packed the box is, and the cost of producing it at that would be something that we'd have to look at.
Well, I think it's not uncommon to see. I know we're diverging here, but it's not uncommon to see retail versions be very different from the Kickstarter editions.
Yeah.
And then, your character packs are on their own. So if you want to add this extra character for more variation, or if you want to add an extra pair of glasses, or you want to add this other story arc to it, these things are all quite common. There's a lot of games are lined up that way. But anyway, we're veering far too far off. We're in a B road now. We need to get back onto the motorway. So yeah, I think we've possibly, in some respects, kind of covered this. The narrative drive is the key to moving players along in They Live, and obviously large parts of the game story is new fiction to the universe. Was that a hard or a fun or a hard process to conceptualize and generate that new material? And I think we know who's going to answer this.
Yeah.
Writer.
It was both, for sure. It was a challenge. So I'm a writer anyway, but this was my first time writing in an established IP. So I really had to, bog myself into that world and understand it. And I must have watched that film, I don't know how many times. We're talking several times a week for a year at least. So at the end of this conversation, if you wanted to see a one-man rendition of the entire movie,
we'll do it together.
That's not a problem.
We'll put it in the extras.
That's next time, yeah. So yeah, it was definitely a challenge. And it was a challenge to try and write something original, but keep it faithful to the film as well. In particular, making it so that it didn't feel like you were missing out if you weren't playing as one of the established characters. So we knew early on we didn't want everyone to gravitate towards Nada and Frank and Holly and Gil. And we wanted to make the other characters just as interesting and feel like they could have been in the movie. So that was a challenge. But I think specifically the hardest challenge was the creating the story decks. Because there's a starting point for each character, there's an end point. And their story has to take them between those 2 points, but we need a system so that every time you play the game, you're not hitting the exact same story.
Yeah.
So they have a deck of cards which is randomized. So I couldn't just build a bridge from start to end. It had to be a start, an end, and then a randomized middle, which was a challenge, especially for the existing characters, where they needed a randomized middle that also could fit within the film. And I think that took a little bit of work to get there narratively, but I think we got there in the end. I hope it worked.
It's basically how Star Trek should be narratively. There's kind of an over arc, but individual weekly episodes like old Next Gen.
You can watch those weekly episodes in any order, and that was the challenge.
I know I keep talking about, I have to talk about my own experience of it because I've nobody else here with me to share their thoughts, but I found the individual story cards fascinating. And I'll be honest with you, from my point of view, I was actually having to go, were they in the film? The feel of it was so right that I found myself going, no, you're one of the new ones. Because it just gelled so well. And actually, both of the times that I've managed to get it, even though it's my copy, everyone's going, oh, you're going to play Nada. No, I'm playing one of the new people. I want to see what their stories are, because that's fresh for me. So it's like, you be Nada, you can be Frank, that's fine, carry on. Oh, you've never seen the film, you can't be Nada. And took it from there. And I've loved, and if nothing else, that would be my reason to get back to the table ASAP, so that I can go, right, next new character, let's see what your story's about. That's been an absolute joy to experience.
Well, that's great to hear. Yeah, I'll take that.
I'm glad. I'm very glad. I mean, obviously we've read those stories back to back like a million times. I can't tell you the amount of times I've read Dixon's story. I think because it was the first one, we had to make sure it worked, really, really well, and just. We got engaged in certain characters as well, and it's a testament to Luke and his writing. The one that I think is really fun that we came up with, just as a silly idea, was Battle Nada. I don't know if you've experienced that one yet.
Played it yet? No.
But obviously, that's like, we're just going to make this ridiculous 1980s action movie, and that's, it's completely not what you'd expect it to be. And I think, you had a lot of fun with that, Luke. I think there's plenty of stuff on the room floor that was just obscene with that.
Yeah.
I'd love it. Looking forward to trying them too. I think we've inadvertently kind of answered, I think, the next question, which was, is there an aspect of the game to which each of you is particularly proud and pleased with the final result? I think, obviously, for you, Andrew, with the sound of things, it's your third child. The glasses sort of seem to mean more to you than you expected to yourself, and for yourself, that narrative bit. So
absolutely. I will just add to that though. Yeah. The other thing that I really do love is the art style by our artist Hugo Max. The brief was keep it all real world, like you could touch it and feel it and it's real, and sort of making sure that it also had that 1980s kind of poster feel. So you look at any posters for They Live, they're not all representative of what the movie is. So it's like it was trying to get a bit of the poster feel, but this really gritty, John Carpenter movie into place. And I just think they got the cheese and the actual grittiness, perfectly balanced. So it's one of those things that I'm wearing the t-shirt today, as is Luke, and it's one of those where I just look at it and go, wow, I really love the style of it, and that's something I'm really proud of. From horrible little sketches, I'm renowned in the team for getting a Google Slides doc and dropping photos together, and I've got no Photoshop ability at all, and going, I kind of want this, and then it comes back, and it's exactly what I wanted, and so I'm very, very proud of the team who are capable of doing that and putting that sort of stuff together. That's the real win. Obviously, the glasses is a really big personal achievement, but as a whole package, the look and feel of it is really big.
It can't be faulted. There's nobody that I've shown it to who hasn't just kind of literally gone, and that's it. They just want to stand and stare at the box. Normally, when you take a game down to the club, it's like, right, let's see what's inside it. And it's just like, right, are you finished? Do I need to wipe that clean or something? Because give me my box, thank you. Right, the reaction, obviously, to They Live seems to have been largely positive, aside from perhaps the odd physical issue with deliveries or whatever. Have you come across any matters as yet of errata or error where you've kind of gone, oh no?
I think the main thing, and luckily, nothing's been consistently a problem. That's the big win. If you're getting messages that are just, this particular card's missing, there's a problem, because that's a huge production issue wherever. This one thing is again the same problem for everybody. If you've got a missing thing and you've got a missing thing and they're completely different, I can resupply them instantly. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it becomes a lot easier, to work with. So the big thing for us is making sure that any customer service and after support we do is as good as it can be. And obviously it's very easy in England. Obviously, we're here, we can deal with the UK quite easily. When the US hits and when Europe hits the rest of the world, there's different processes we're going to have to follow, but we'll always work to the best of our ability to make sure everybody's happy with the end result. That's what it's about, and about setting a precedent for us on, for what we're doing ongoing.
It's certainly come across very much in my dealings online with you prior to this interview that you are very communicative. I mean, even your whole Kickstarter campaign, you were very clear with people about what was happening. You were communicating all the time. You were showing people what the things were, which is all lovely. Once that was over and it moved into the process and shipping, again, you were there with updates. Even if the update would say, well, there's no news today, this is still getting done, that's still getting done, the boat hasn't left yet. So, for first time doing this, granted, you have the experience of doing essentially all of this with action figures. But I think from a gamer's point of view, it goes, who the hell are these guys? They've never made a game before. Oh, hang on. This all seems to be going rather swimmingly, and they're doing a better job than some people who've been doing this for a long time.
I think it's, how can I put it? There's that old adage of treat people how you want to be treated yourself. So, be honest with me, say, this is what's happening, and that's it. There's no point in shying away from, well, what are you going to do? Just close the computer down for 2 months and ignore emails? You know what I mean? I know some people could do that, but the end result is people get wound up and it becomes more problematic. And from our side of things, what we're going to do, deal with PayPal refunds and messages from Stripe and all these other companies that deal with payment processing. You create more of an issue than saying this is where we're at. And I mean, there's been several times in the campaign where we weren't happy with certain things in development and production and testing of stuff, and we just went, you know what, we're not doing it that way. And because the option was ship it as is, and everybody be miserable, or fix it and change it. So like, for example, on the hidden image things, you'll see they're very hard to see in real life. When you see them on camera, you can kind of see a faint outline. And so what we did is we etched both the human and the invader into the same one. Now, that originally wasn't like that, okay? They were virtually invisible, but under certain lights and whatever, you could sort of kind of make that out. So we dual etched those things in there. So if you did catch a glance at an odd angle, you're seeing both. Yeah, and that was part of the design process for that. And I was very, very clear. I literally filmed stuff outside my house in the garden, going, "This is what it's like," Because the beauty of the way that the tech works means that most of the time you can actually see it on camera. In fact, sometimes you can see things on camera that you wouldn't see in real life because of the way that cameras work. So it's one of those things that for us, being very clear on that communication, saying this is where we are, this is where how we feel about it was quite important. And I think you feel pretty much the same about that, Luke.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it will stand to you because there are plenty who bury their heads in the sand when the problems start hitting. So if you guys keep up that level of openness and communication moving forward, you'll have very few problems, bar problems outside of your control, but certainly with your fan base. So actually on that topic then, the next one is, what is on the horizon for the games department? I know you have obviously got to finish and close off fulfillment on They Live, but if you're in like any other business, you're already looking down the highway and thinking, you next.
There is a number of bits. I mean, Luke, you want to take this one, or?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as you said, developing this and delivering this to everybody has very much been the focus, and we have said on Kickstarter how much of a challenge that's been. But we're definitely going to keep growing the games division. I think we've got a few things and some quite exciting things in the pipeline.
Yeah.
The next one, which I think we can talk about, is So I've got a card game that's not attached to any IP that I've been developing in the background called 1%, which will probably be our next game, I should think. And then after that, we'll see.
Yeah, and it's much smaller. Like it's your warm up game is the way I describe it. It's the warm up game. It's to get you into that, and I'm excited about that one. I don't think it's going to be a Kickstarter job. I think it's going to be a direct to retail and just going that side of things. Pick it up off the shelf. So that's probably the next thing on the horizons. There's other things which we've sort of poked and prodded at, which are licensed, so I can't really talk about, but completely. It's more poked and prod than we have a licensed game, here it is off camera sort of thing. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. There's lots of things and ideas brewing in the background, but 1% is probably the next thing that we'll
excellent. Well, we'll watch out for that. This is what happens with me when I talk. I wander off the track, and then I've asked 2 or 3 of the questions that we're going to come across. So number 9, we've already done potentially expansions and all the rest of it, continuing the Tale of the Resistance. I think we've summarised it. There's a possibility. You're playing with the idea that there might be a pruned down retail version, and Luke's got lots of narrative ideas there, which are the bread and butter of this, that could hopefully see the light of day. I'm not going to ask you what drew you both into the gaming industry, because that's quite a naive question. Now we've listened to you, it's quite obvious why you are doing this and why you are doing what you're doing. The passion's there, the excitement's there, the interest's there, and it's naturally kind of intersecting with what you're already doing with Iconiq Studios. So I would just look silly asking that one. I'll settle for just looking silly like I normally do. What I will ask is a what if question. I like these ones. So, there you are, you're sitting. What if? Is there a particular type of game, now that you're into games, is there a particular genre, a particular IP that if money was no object, all the barriers were lifted, you would love to do, be it a passion project or be it, a serious kind of commercial opportunity?
I've got quite a few I could name for this, I think.
Go for it! The floor is yours.
Here's the list.
I'd love to do something very sci-fi horror-y, Dead Space or Alien. I know that there's a few Alien games out there already, and they're very good as well, but I'd love to do my own take on that. Less horror, but something in the Matrix would be amazing.
Narrative, I can feel it.
Narrative, I'd love to get my hands on that. What else is there? So if looking at more comic books, Silver Surfer, do something proper, expansive and spacey would be amazing, or more on the ground, something Punisher. I think I could sit and name dream projects all day.
Wax lyrical,
there's a lot I'd love to.
They'd all be huge stories.
Yeah.
For me, unfortunately, a lot of the IPs I'd love to do are either done or they've done something similar, but I have an alternate idea, and it's like, are people going to want it? So, like, things like, I'm a massive Evil Dead fan, so things like Army of Darkness would really tick my box. I love that movie. Aliens, yet again, is I've got something really interesting for Aliens, but the problem is the amount of stuff that there is in the marketplace. I'm a massive fan of things like Tron and video games and comic books and stuff like that as well. So there's lots of stuff. There's lots of stuff where I go, oh Luke, I've got this idea, and we ring each other up at silly o'clock at night, or built a little bittier of an idea, and it's, we've got just ideas and stuff there. But then it all comes down to IP and what's wanting to be promoted at that point, and that's where I'm quite realistic on what we can and can't do.
You come back down to earth and think
That's
for another day. No, listen, that's fair enough. But listen, it's the blue sky thinking sometimes, and even just off the cuff comments of the things that somebody else here, it goes, oh, maybe those guys would be the ones to look at this for me. So you never know. You never know. It's a dream big, dare to dream. The gaming market seems to be always growing, always more creators, always more developers, lots of small indie houses and all the rest of it. Now, with your forced foray out into this big bad world, what sage advice have you chalked up along the way that if you're sitting in the pub and some young up and coming happens to express their idea, I'd love to have a go at bringing my game to reality. Is there any sage advice you'd pass on to them?
Don't. No, I'm joking.
You're not the first to say that.
I think moving slightly away from the question of games, I think particularly more general, if you're doing anything creative, I think it's important to try and get into the habit of doing a little bit every day. It's very easy to create something when you're inspired and when you're motivated, but I found to get anything finished, you have to be able to do it when you're really not, when you're not feeling it. And the more it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but the more structured you are with that, I found the more it helps. If you do a little bit every day, you get into that rhythm of being able to create and add to something. And a very a personal one for me, this won't work for everybody, but what really works for me is music. So anytime I begin a creative project, I create a playlist of music that feels like I want this thing to feel. And it's very important that it's not music that will come up in any of my sort of daily rotations or anything I listen to normally. And then every single time I work on that thing, I have that playlist on. And I found, especially if you're juggling multiple different creative ideas, I found it really helps because quite quickly as soon as you put that music on, you'll be back into that mindset. It'll keep it consistent. All that motivation, all those ideas will come back. As I said, I don't think it works for everyone, but that really, really helps me.
I know where you're coming from.
For games specifically, I would say keep it manageable. It's very easy to just keep expanding on something, and an idea becomes so big that it's hard to actually turn into something. So keep it manageable. Do a few things well rather than a lot of things sort of messily. And the obvious one is keep testing, because it's as I found, quite often we'll map an idea out and I'll have a lot of assumptions as to how things work, but when we actually sit and play it, that changes quite dramatically. So just test as much as you can with as many different people as you can.
And that, that's the good dynamic that me and Luke have together, is that I'm renowned for breaking stuff or going what if or trying to meta the thing to the point where we try and close down as many of those gaps as is possible. So working together with each other a lot and having that relationship where if I say something to Luke, Luke doesn't take it as critical. Luke doesn't take it as I'm poo-pooing your idea. It's a what if, and then it opens a question that we can then look at and I can be wrong. I can have raised that issue, and then there's still the underlying issue of Luke's original idea was right, but we've at least pursued the avenue, checked it, closed it off, and then come back to the original place that we were. And I would say, for the other inspiring thing, obviously originality is important. I know it sounds really cliche, but there's a lot of sticker slap stuff out there. And if you want to stand out or engage people, that was one of the important things with the glasses, with the art style, with what we were going for, was to kind of go, no, the original concept's this, and although it's very tempting to go off and do this because it's easier, this is what the original concept is, and we kind of married to that. And I would say from just the other side of things is as well, be prepared to deal with demands. And I don't mean that in a negative way, and I don't mean that in negative from a customer base point of view. You're going to have demands from the factory. We want this much money, we want this within this much time, we want you to get this out of our factory now we've finished it, and ship it now, please. And then, you've got time scales. You will go on Kickstarter and go, this is our idea, great. And then people will, because unfortunately there's a lot of companies who've kind of changed the narrative of Kickstarter from being a crowdfunding platform to create something to being a retail, we sell a finished game, we're just going to send it you in 4 months kind of pre-order service. And so there's people that have got different expectations, that they think all of the game can still either be changed or that it needs to be shipped tomorrow, and they expect both of those things done at the same time. And that both those things are not interconnectable. So it's about, so you've got to be open and manage those expectations. So one of the things that we got a load of requests for with They Live was miniatures. Loads of, I want minis, I want minis, I want minis. And one, I mean, like originally they started life as these standees that were going to look like this.
Yeah. And
so our compromise halfway through, which our artist hated me for, I need to say this, because I was like, you need to draw legs on everybody, and they're like, but they were never designed for legs. And I'm like, but we're having legs, and I need to put them on Kickstarter. So please do that for me now. That was a big sort of change that we did, and that was our compromise with the community. But it's people don't understand that there's a lot of like licensing requirements. So as soon as you go into miniatures, you're doing 3D likeness, which requires a different set of rules and regs that you've then got to work under. And certain companies own certain actors' likenesses. So, for example, if somebody's been a wrestler, there's a chance that WWE have got their hands in a contract somewhere.
Yeah. And
then you've got to go to them for an approval as well, and it slows things down. So there's lots of interesting things about the way that likenesses work when they become 3D. So it's about managing those expectations, and it perhaps would have been really easy for us to go, oh yeah, we'll do miniatures, great, and then show some 3D renders 4 weeks into the campaign or something to push up money. But I think being faithful to the original plan was more worth it in the long run, and as a result, we ended up with sort of these really 80s style movie poster standees, which I like more than those miniatures.
I think they're perfect for it. I mean, I would be a miniatures fan, but I've got to say I think they're perfect because they do. There's that moment of, this is just like a game when I was a child, except there's lots more parts to it, and I've no idea what I'm doing yet. Brilliant.
You really do need, taking a step back and to where you started there, you really do need somebody who will break your game for you as well.
Oh, yeah.
So many times I'll take, some printed out at home game to Andy's, and I'll be excited, and I'll go, look at this, and I'll go, yeah, but this will break. But don't do that then. And then, but it really helps, because then you go away and you fix it and refine it. So you need somebody who can. You're very good at that, and you're very good at looking at something and going, okay, I think this wouldn't work if I did it this way. And yeah, you definitely need that.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing, there was something that we were messing around with as an idea a while back, and my son basically came up with an idea for the end game, and he was like 13 at the time. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, we got this idea for this. And he was like, oh yeah, but what about this? As a 13-year-old, I was like, didn't even think of it.
Yeah.
None of us had thought about it, and it was just one of those things where, having those outside opinions and those what if questions, and like we said, don't take them personally as a negative that somebody's criticizing you. It's going to be, if you've got a valid reason for the way that you're doing it, rather than this is how I want to do it, 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to present that argument, and that is the way it should be done. But if there is a sort of hole in that armor, you need to patch it.
Yeah,
Fair play.
absolutely.
Fair play. Nope, all sound and definitely sage. Well done, chaps.
Tried.
That was the one they were most scared of. Right, we're hitting the 50-minute mark, so we've naturally come to kind of a good wrap point, because 15 minutes attention span for most people's doing quite well. So you've kept them, I think you've kept them fairly well fed with info.
I hope so.
So a parting question, just for fun and giggles, we'll keep it really simple, and that is, of course, sometimes what I'll do to games designers, developers, is I'll plunge them into the world. You thankfully have a reasonably survivable world that you have created with They Live. So if the two of you find yourselves waking up and there you are in your game world of They Live, the simple question is, which of you would be human and which of you would end up being an invader?
I'll let you go, Andy. You go first.
I think
I've got an idea on this.
Immediately, mentally, I'm also going. I think Hugo the artist's definitely an invader, just based on having spoken to him on a regular basis. I think personally, resistance. Would I win or survive? Is probably no, but I'm not even sure Nada technically won or survived that movie. Spoilers for a movie from like between 87 and 89, depending on where you were. Probably wouldn't survive, but I think on principle alone, resistance, doing the right thing.
You would go down doing the right
what
thing.
You believe in is important to me. Core.
Very
concept,
good.
So.
What were you look? Where do you think you would?
Well, I looked at this as a bit of a versus question between the two of us. Maybe I've approached this the wrong way. I saw you as resistance as well. I think you could get people to follow you and then believe in the cause. I think I'd probably be invader.
Couldn't say
as for who would win, I don't know. I think it's a bit of I think we'd compromise and take 50% of LA each and keep it that way. It depends if my partner Kat, during game testing with us, she would quite often end up being the invader and would win the game for us. So I think if she was on my side, I think we'd take LA easy.
There you go.
I'll make the compromise of 0% of LA, and we'll stick to that original idea.
All right.
That looks very answer confirms that he's obviously invader material. He's straight about conquest. You were about survival. He's straight about conquest.
Yeah.
I'm about to take it exactly. That's it. So if you have bought the game and you do have a pair of those glasses, please do not look at me through them. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In editing, just put an invader face.
Just put an invader face.
Red, wavy effect. Pizza face. Gentlemen, it has been a genuine pleasure getting to chat with you and hearing a little bit more about the workings behind it all. We look forward with great anticipation to see what comes next from Iconiq Studios once the dust settles. Because now you've started the ball rolling, you're not allowed to stop. There's no rest. This is the gaming industry. You've got a product. That's what it's all about. But seriously, thank you very much. Folks at home, if you're not already familiar with them, go and check them out. There will be a link in the comments down below or in the description box. I don't know, one of the two of them. Check them out on Facebook, do follow, and stay tuned for more things from Iconiq Studios. I predict big things based on this first one out the fence for them. But in the meantime, that's it from us. As always, do all that social media stuff, subscribe, like, whatever. It's like hugging us, but you don't have to touch us. And that's not just because, you're a stranger and we don't want you touching us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye for now.